Nick is a prodigy with a bright future and a gorgeous girlfriend, living the dream life, you know? But everything changes when he gets kicked out of his party and is forced to start from zero once again. So he gathers a bunch of rejects and leads them to become the strongest triple S-class party in the world. The story begins with Nick's life turning upside down when he gets expelled from his party, the War Masters, by Argos, whom he saw as a father figure. And as if that wasn't enough, his supposed girlfriend cheats on him and dumps him on the same day too. The poor bastard sits on a fountain in the rain, getting completely soaked and too devastated to pay attention. He remembers the fight with Argos, where he refuses to forgive a guy named Goroso, who ran away with all the money they earned with so much effort just to impress some random girl. Argos flips the situation and calls him selfish, saying he's not fit to be an adventurer. He reminds him of how he took him in when he was just a child and tells him to find another place where he truly belongs. While he's about to break down, a blue-haired girl appears holding an umbrella. She says he looks like a stray dog and casually hands him a ticket to her idol show. Nick stares at her and says she doesn't look like an idol, then asks why she's there. The girl says she's just starting and that cheering people up is part of her job and passion. She gives him the umbrella and runs off, asking him to show up at her show. Nick doesn't want to go, but still ends up attending the show of that girl named 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. And before he knows it, he transforms into a hardcore idol otaku, spending all his savings on every piece of merchandise he can get. Wanting to earn more to fund his honest otaku lifestyle, the guy shows up at the Adventurers Guild and starts looking for rookies to form a new team. There, Nick spots a guy and tries to approach, but the moment he makes a move, the guy pretends not to understand, and Nick ends up not talking to a single soul. After wasting all that time, he drags himself to a tavern and orders the cheapest thing on the menu just so he doesn't kick the bucket. He looks around and sees everyone laughing and wonders if he'll ever be able to laugh like that again. That's when 3 adventurers enter and sit at his table. He thinks they might be a party, but since none of them bother to talk, he realizes they're all lonely, just like him. One of these adventurers is a magic user with a fierce yet elegant look. And from her crystal staff and flashy clothes, Nick deduces she must be some noble. After staring at her for a while, his eyes turn to a drunk cleric who seems to have already been kicked out of the church. Then he turns to the third one, a Dragonian girl. Nick tries to give a friendly smile, but she just sits there with the same serious, expressionless face that doesn't even blink. At this moment, the drinks arrive. Nick sinks into melancholy and starts rambling, thinking that anyone he befriended would end up betraying him anyway, and wonders if he'll ever be able to trust anyone again. He downs his drink in one go and slams the mug on the table just to hear the others do exactly the same thing while everyone shouts in sync that they also can't trust anyone. They freeze and stare at each other in total disbelief. The rich mage among them, named Tiana, starts sharing her story. One day, after performing a lightning spell, which in this world means combining water and wind magic, she gets praised by her school's master. She gets too excited and runs to tell her fiancé Alex about her progress. There she finds the guy sitting with some random girl named Lynn. She sits beside him, too nice to even notice that her man is cheating on her, and happily shares how her teacher loved her lightning magic. But then she finally notices the girl beside him and asks who she is. Out of nowhere, her fiancé starts accusing her of bullying Aline at school, and then starts complaining, saying that all she does is brag about her magic. He suddenly explodes, claiming he always felt belittled because of her. And right there, he breaks off the engagement, dumps her on the spot, and marries Alan right in front of her eyes. Tiana's school ends. The poor, heartbroken girl starts looking for a job, but everywhere she goes, people reject her, saying that a noble lady like her is too delicate for real work. After being rejected from every place she tries, Tiana ends up at a racetrack and somehow wins her first bets, making a fortune on the spot. She gets addicted immediately, but in no time loses everything and ends up broke, barely able to pay rent. She then tries to find a partner to adventure with, but anyone who sees her gets intimidated by the fierce, stone-cold look on her face. She even tries to force a smile, but nothing works. And with no luck left, she ends up in this tavern, sitting beside Nick. Nick then turns to the cleric, whose name is Zen, and asks about his story. Zen says he used to be a cleric in some small town. There was a little girl named Muriel, who helped him gather herbs in exchange for some money. Things were normal until one day the girl suddenly falls in love with him and even holds his hand, asking him to marry her. Zen gently refuses, saying he's a man of the church and can't marry. But the moment he refuses the marriage proposal from the minor, the girl explodes in tears and runs off crying, calling him an idiot while disappearing. Some days later, right when Zen is about to be promoted to High Cleric, the guards suddenly show up looking for him with Mary standing behind them, looking like something terrible happened to her. Zen runs to her, but the guards stop him, restraining him. The girl accuses him of serious crimes, and before he can explain himself, Zen is thrown in prison. He spends the next 3 months behind bars, and when finally released, is banished with everyone calling him a pervert. After being expelled, Zen finds himself at an inn where he stays with a lady there. He helps the lady relieve her back pain, and in exchange, she advises him to visit the Labyrinth City and become an adventurer. Zen explains that's how he ended up becoming a womanizer and eventually found himself sitting in this tavern. Hearing the two stories, Nick argues that he can't believe a word they say and asks if they feel the same. Zen, however, declares that he will defeat the Demon King. Nick turns to the Dragonian, whose name is 𝐂𝐴, and asks her to share her side too. She simply responds by shouting that something important was stolen from her, and worse still, by the person who meant the most to her. Then Nick reveals his story, explaining how a girl named Claudine dumped him and how he discovered she was using him the whole time. Suddenly, Nick wakes up and finds himself upside down, with his face pressed against the floor. It becomes clear that they were all sleeping in the same room. He quickly gets up, wakes everyone, and tells them to leave only to realize it's not his place. Tiana then calmly tells him he should be the one to leave, since it's her place. Before you go, tell me one thing. Is this really right? Will we be able to earn enough money to survive? Each of us has something that drives us, whether it's idols, food, bets, or women. I don't know about you, but I care about things that give purpose to my life. That's what I'm proposing. Later that morning, the four losers enter the guild staring at a young receptionist like she owes them something. An old guild lady appears, scolding them for making the cute receptionist cry. She recognizes Nick from the War Masters and starts filling out the guild registration form. She points to 𝐂𝐴 and mentions that she's the famous survivor girl who apparently came back alive after doing a Hank dungeon alone. She adds that staying alive is the most important thing for adventurers and asks about their party name. Nick responds proudly with survivors and smiles, saying that no matter what happens, they'll make sure to come back alive. The others also approve the name and shout the new group's name. After finishing the registration, Nick introduces 3 rules for the new group, which include never getting involved in each other's hobbies, always keeping an eye on the money, and no matter what happens, everyone has to come back alive. Instead of letting one person handle the money, Nick suggests everyone share the responsibility of guarding it. While he explains how they would do this, they end up laughing and joking that Nick would be the worst at opening the safe anyway. That's when Zen looks and asks why he's being so paranoid about the money part, to which Nick shares some of his past to explain. Zen adds that Nick basically wants them to trust and doubt each other at the same time, which they find somewhat annoying. Still, everyone talks about how much they wish they could trust someone again, but agree to remain skeptical for now, just for safety. The group heads to the Sticky Sewers, which turns out to be one of 3 dungeons they can explore while stuck at the initial J rank. Nick takes leadership and explains that as soon as they clear 2 dungeons, they'd be promoted to F rank. He continues mentioning how these specific dungeons are basically practice areas for rookies to get the hang of this whole adventurer thing. While Nick continues with his lecture, he suddenly steps on something sticky. But luckily for him, it doesn't turn out to be a trap. That's when he introduces the very first prey of the survivors group, which happens to be a small, harmless slime chewing on weeds. Everyone can't help but point out how adorable the little thing is, but Nick explains that although this gooey cutie doesn't look threatening at all, it can actually transform into a giant threat that can start chewing on cows if it manages to infiltrate a farm. He then shows them how to handle slime and completely shocks everyone when he casually removes its core. And that's all it takes. He finishes by telling them to make sure to collect all those crystals, since they should be exchanged for money later. On the way to the top, Zen teases Tiana, asking if joining the group was just a bet for her, which makes her protest while she complains to Nick that Zen is breaking the rule by interfering in her business. Nick smiles and quietly wonders if forming this group might have been the right decision. Zen then tries to take down a slime and admits it feels somewhat wrong to take a creature's life. Everyone tries to convince him and end up discussing why monsters attack humans. Though nobody reaches a clear answer, Nick reminds them to stay alert, and Tiana argues that the only change they've seen in the slime so far is that they've gotten faster. She then brags about how she once eliminated orcs and goblins, but right after she trips, and Nick casually mentions that the slimes here shoot sticky fluids and are as slippery as a banana peel. The mage gets embarrassed after missing and quickly casts Ice Dance in her anger, but misses and accidentally shoots at 𝐂𝐴, who barely manages to block with her sword. Tiana asks if she's okay and apologizes, but 𝐂𝐴 stays cold and tells her to be careful, arguing that next time it might be her who hits her by mistake. This incident opens a rift in their newly formed bond, and the 2 girls start avoiding each other. Sometime later, they arrive at the last floor of the dungeon, where Nick once again reminds everyone to stay alert. That's when Zen spots a huge slime monster, and Nick says it's the dungeon boss. Hearing this, the mage suddenly charges at the monster, claiming she can take it down alone, but only ends up creating a complete mess. The group ends up washing their clothes by the river after the mess. Nick explains how giant slimes react to strong magic, spewing goo everywhere. He then tells Zen that his place is in the back line and that he should trust others to protect him. Nick removes his armor and reveals all his strengths and weaknesses, even admitting he knows nothing about magic. When the others ask why he's revealing so much, he tells them that if they understand each other better, it can help them build trust. He gives a small motivational speech, trying to lift their spirits and keep them motivated. Hearing this, Zen finally opens up and shares his own strengths and weaknesses too. Tiana stands in front of 𝐂𝐿𝐴, makes a bow of apology, and then reveals her strengths too. This gesture seems to soften the Dragonian's heart. And when Tiana sits down and starts acting coldly, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 lets out a sneeze that launches a small ember toward her to light a campfire and warm her, though she jokes that she was trying to set the room on fire but missed. That small moment finally seems to resolve things between the two. Next, our heroes head to the Goblin Forest, where Nick explains that these monsters are generally weak, as long as nobody ends up surrounded by a whole bunch of them. At this moment, a goblin jumps and attacks Zen out of nowhere, but luckily he manages to dodge the attack. Nick intervenes quickly and finishes off the creature. After that, the survivors face an entire horde of goblins, most of which Nick takes down alone. That's when Tiana reveals her detection skill. With her skill, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 points out that one of the monsters has too much magic to be just a common goblin. Nick tells the team it's probably an ogre, which the survivors briefly consider retreating from, but then agree to advance, weighing both the reward and the people who could be in danger if they left the goblins and the ogre unchecked. They form a plan that relies mainly on Nick and 𝐂𝐿𝐴, since magic doesn't work on evolved ogres. On the way, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 and Tiana bring up their trust issue nonsense again and end up agreeing to give each other another chance. Suddenly, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 senses a monster nearby and runs after it with the others quickly following. Zen casts a magic buff to increase their strength, while Tiana uses her spells to clear the path ahead. As the battle heats up, the talking ogre orders his minions to attack. 𝐂𝐿𝐴's legs start trembling, since she wants to trust Tiana again. And Tiana feels the same. The two finally place their trust in each other, and the mage casts her spell that passes cleanly through 𝐂𝐿𝐴 without hurting her, clearing all the goblins in her path. 𝐂𝐿𝐴 then advances, and with her flaming sword unleashes a dragon fire strike that takes down the giant ogre. After the fight, Nick starts collecting goblin horns to use as proof of payment and asks the others to help. While 𝐂𝐿𝐴 puts a horn in her bag, she finds a pendant that brings back a memory, leaving her silently upset. At this moment, Nick stumbles upon another ogre that he suspects is in the middle of evolving. He struggles a bit during the fight, and after ripping off the horn, he loses control. The horn slips from his hand and falls right on 𝐂𝐿𝐴's pendant, cracking it. We see a flashback where 𝐂𝐿𝐴 lies motionless on the floor of a sinister dungeon while moaning in pain until a nightmare-sized insect crawls over her face and wakes her up abruptly. She takes out the pendant and stares at it, trying to process that it wasn't just a dream. Back to when she was with her last party, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 walks through the market, while a scamming merchant notices how much she likes a pendant and tries to trick her. As she walks away, he shouts that Dragonian monsters like her should be careful, since she damaged his products with her dirty claws and threatens to call the knights if she doesn't pay. 𝐂𝐿𝐴 starts to worry, but a blonde man named 𝐂𝐨𝐴 appears and reminds her not to stray from him when shopping. The disgusting merchant complains to 𝐂𝐨𝐴 about 𝐂𝐿𝐴's mistake. Then the man takes the pendant from him and tells her to go ahead and scratch it again, leaving both speechless. He makes a bet that he'll pay double if she's really guilty, and then peels it like a potato, exposing the merchant's dirty scam, without making a big deal. He takes out the real pendant he liked from his pocket, and after getting his money back, hands it to her before making a smooth and confident exit. You see, Dragonians are a proud demi-human race whose fate is to help the hero and save the world. And that's exactly why she spent every day supporting 𝐂𝐴𝐴's party. The next day, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 is polishing her family's dragon jewel when 𝐂𝐴𝐴 asks if she's ready to go out and tells her to leave her things behind, since no one would dare steal from them. With that, 𝐂𝐿𝐴 follows the man she's proud to serve with all her heart on a mission where, as usual, the others shower her with compliments, though it's 𝐂𝐴𝐴's approval that brings her the greatest joy. Later, she offers to help with the heavy work, but 𝐂𝐴𝐴 tells her to trust in her party and save her strength for when it really matters. As they approach the boss, the pot snake, he assures her that he supports her, and 𝐂𝐿𝐴 advances without hesitation. She bumps her shoulder into the pot, which enrages the serpent and draws all its attention to her, making the rest of the party join the fight. She asks 𝐂𝐴𝐴 why he's shining like that, but he keeps telling her to just trust them and stay focused. She continues calling for him until the snake wraps around her, leaving her breathless and falling like a sack of potatoes. The blonde guy and his party start collecting the loot and casually thank their strong dragon girl for being the perfect bait for the famous and lethal poison. The last thing she sees before passing out is all of them walking away without even a glance back for her life. Later, she manages to return limping, driven by anger and determined to recover the dragon jewel her father gave her, since it's made of the finest materials and grew stronger along with her throughout her life. Full of conviction, she finally collapses right in front of the inn, where the innkeeper tells her that 𝐂𝐴𝐴 and his party claimed she died and then disappeared. She asks what happened to her belongings, and he says 𝐂𝐴𝐴 promised to return everything to her family. 𝐂𝐨𝐴N has a flashback of his warm face, telling her to trust him, and almost throws away the filthy gift he gave her. But then pain takes over, and her knees give out completely. After that, she goes through a period of self-reflection, until one day, starving to death, she sees an adventurer enter the tavern and literally breaks down the door. She hears that he's 𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, the famous solo eater. She watches silently as he enjoys the feast with the kind of joy a Mexican shows when eating tacos. And this somehow inspires her. So she orders the same meal. Later, she discovers that the guy is a legendary solo hunter by day and a gourmet food lover by night. So she decides to follow him every day thinking he can't see her, like John Cena. 𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 notices what she's doing and starts giving discreet tips about what to buy without making a big deal. The next day, she returns the favor, saving his sword from a drunk at the tavern. Then, he gives her a simple thanks, but she thanks him from the bottom of her heart because he's the man who showed her the true flavor of good food and helped fill the huge hole left in her once innocent soul with food. Still, 𝐂𝐴AN quickly realizes that eating all this great food costs money which she doesn't have. And that's the day she ends up finding everyone at the guild. Back to the present, Nick searches everywhere for a pendant like 𝐂𝐴AN's and starts thinking it's even more terrifying that she didn't get mad at him. That's when he suddenly hears 𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 calling him from behind, pleasantly surprised that he no longer looks like a beggar. Later, he talks with her near a fountain, where 𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 flat out says it's pretty selfish to expect forgiveness just for replacing the pendant, but then adds that it's fine, since her selfishness led her to him. She tells Nick that maybe he should be 𝐂𝐴AN's gift, which gives him a very wrong idea. Sometime later, he finds her at the market, happy, eating hot squid balls, and she tries to make him taste some super spicy balls with wriggling worms that almost send him to the afterlife. But Nick is happy to see 𝐂𝐴AN smiling again. After that, he asks 𝐂𝐴AN if the pendant meant a lot to her, but she tells him not to worry so much, and that in fact, she feels much happier now that it's gone. Later at the guild, the small group meeting is interrupted by a cat woman who invites them to the back. There, a lady gives them a mission: explore the labyrinth of bonds and recover a legendary artifact hidden in the depths. The lady explains that the mission is to locate the 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 blade and even promises to pay them for each attempt, even if they fail. Shocked that she offers thousands for something that seems like a beginner job, Nick gets suspicious and insists that she detail everything and put it in writing so she doesn't try to scam them when paying. With that resolved, they advance through the dungeon like it's a casual adventure hunting for the sword. While Nick still can't get the idea of 𝐂𝐴AN's pendant out of his head, Zen marvels at the advanced design of the labyrinth, but Nick tells everyone to stop talking and focus on finding secret passages. Meanwhile, a mysterious voice observes their progress through surveillance cameras, eager to see if this disorganized group can survive to the end. Descending the stairs, Nick leads the group to where the map shows until they reach a dead end. But he quickly notices that the lamps should be red, not green. So Nick goes straight in saying he likes to be thorough and also maybe because he smells a secret room full of money, like his money bin. A door suddenly opens and they enter, finding a large dark room with tanks lined up. Then Tiana asks if they really need to search the whole place, but Nick points out the obvious and goes straight for the pedestal with the bright light. Tiana stops quickly and scans for traps, using her magic vision, and the space appears suspiciously clean. But the moment they approach the pedestal, the lights suddenly turn on and a voice calls to the group, congratulating them on their brave journey. While the old voice from the sword continues talking nonsense, Nick ignores it and carefully examines the broken sword there. Tiana thinks it might be a magic sword, but Nick calls it more trash than his WFU, which really irritates the talking sword. Nick tells the senile blade to stop playing Shakespeare and just say where the Sword of Bonds is. Everyone is shocked when the sword says that's exactly what they were looking for. Pretending to agree with the old man, Nick says he won't throw it away out of respect for its age, which makes the sword curious because no one is equipping it. As soon as it realizes none of them uses a short sword, it starts panicking about what they'll do with its greatness. Then Nick casually says they'll obviously sell it for good money. The sword immediately bursts into tears, crying that it doesn't want to be discarded again, like the guild liars. When they ask what the old man is rambling about, it reveals that the guild that developed it, the prototype sword 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, sealed it in the labyrinth afterward so no one could get their hands on it. And it's been waiting for a worthy partner ever since. Nick says he understands, but that he understands money more. 𝐂𝐴AN begs him to use its power for good, instead of being like Elon, while a nearby machine starts rumbling threateningly, coming to life. Then they hear a huge explosion, and 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 casually mentions that the Guardian is officially on its way. Out of nowhere, a huge gooey monster bursts in and forces everyone to flee. Tiana throws some sharp ice shards right at its ugly face, while charging headfirst to cut it in half. But 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨 realizes something is wrong, and before Nick can shout a warning, the creature reflects the ice shards back at 𝐂𝐿 and knocks her down. Nick charges in to cover the others attacking the monster and shouts for everyone to run. While he keeps its attention, he quickly realizes that his attacks aren't doing absolutely anything, while the sword explains that it's made of nano-machines and begs Nick to use its power, because that's his only real chance. In desperation, Nick's blade of bright light gets bigger, while the others struggle to get through the unbreakable door blocking their escape. While he looks at each of them, the sword tells Nick to imagine 𝐂𝐿 in his mind and sing Unity, but the light suddenly disappears. Then he yells at the piece of trash for lying. He tries to rip a piece off the monster anyway, only for the Guardian to crush him and throw him into a hole in the floor like a golf ball. Seeing that the attacks don't work, 𝐂𝐿 has the genius idea of freezing it with ice magic and gives 𝐂𝐿 a chance to save Nick. The moment she jumps into the hole, he comes out of his shell, leaving the two mages to buy time. Meanwhile, inside the rubble, Nick realizes he fractured some ribs and considers giving up until he hears her calling him. He tells her to run away with the other two while they can, which makes her very angry, and she says it's meaningless unless everyone comes home together. Nick gets up and apologizes for breaking her pendant, even though she told him not to worry. 𝐂𝐿 confesses that the party leader gave it to her, and even though she was furious with his betrayal, she couldn't get rid of it, since she hoped he would one day return to her life, but decided to move forward and focus on the precious people with her now. She shocks him and says she's happy he's gone now and lifts him up with her precious smile. Seeing his strengthen, 𝐂𝐿 asks Nick to activate it once more. Back to the surface, Tiana gives up and tells Zen to stop wasting spells on her and focus on saving Nick. While they say their last words, a blinding flash of light explodes behind the Guardian, which is shattered into pieces by Nick and 𝐂𝐿's fusion. 𝐂𝐿 explains that the Guardian's core is capable of moving throughout its body and makes it almost impossible to land a clean hit. Then Nick gathers a huge amount of magic and channels it into a single massive sword strike that lights up the entire monster and completely destroys its core, though the two also collapse and their fusion comes undone. Meanwhile, at the guild, they show the sword to the lady and the Catwoman, who don't seem that impressed. She calls it quite disappointing, probably because it's more of a vintage relic than a sword, and admits she'll pay them for the work they had, which Nick approves. But she then turns to the small, white-haired dwarf, who watches them from behind, and proudly introduces himself as 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨, the Sword of Bonds. Later, 𝐂𝐂𝐨𝐽 laughs at how easily they tricked the guild lady, which makes Nick question his whole thing about defending justice and such, though Zen is still confused about how it works and worried that he chose such an obvious name for someone who wants to go unnoticed. Later, in Tiana's room, Nick empties the money bag on the table and everyone gets excited thinking about what to spend on payday. 𝐂𝐿 gets a bit confused about who he should go with, but Nick reminds her of the first survivor rule that says ruining each other's fun is not allowed. He offers to take him to the idol show if he can stay quiet in sword form the whole time. But after seeing him already dying of boredom, Tiana offers to take him to see a race at the Forbidden Grounds on the condition that he doesn't complain about how she spends her money. The next day, 𝐂𝐿 silently admires the beauty of nature around him, exuding such a poetic vibe that the nearby survivors can't help but notice. Tiana casually pulls out a lighter, getting 𝐂𝐿's attention, who immediately praises it with interest. She smiles and dives into her memories, thinking about the time she spent with her teacher. At the same time, Professor Nick digs up some ancient relics to serve as a safe and then brings some bronze coins, telling everyone to guard them well. Apparently that small stock is all the money they have left, so the group agrees to accept missions. The scene then flows to Tiana's past, back to when she graduated from magic school. She remembers the admission her teacher gave her as a farewell gift. Along with it comes the guilt of how she ended up ruining the career of the teacher she admired most. He was dragged into her scandal and lost his chance at the sage title he always dreamed of. However, even after everything, he still looked at her with a smile. While the conversation continues, the teacher suddenly bursts into laughter for no apparent reason. And that laughter only gets more intense until it becomes disturbing. Tiana reflects on his condition and feels deep pity, wishing things could go back to how they were before. As she gets up from bed, she wonders if she can wake up in her mansion again. Meanwhile, 𝐂𝐿 also wakes up, followed soon by Zen. At the same time, Nick finds himself stuck in a dream about Claudine, but it quickly transforms into a nightmare, waking him up while he gasps heavily. He starts wondering if it was telepathy and if 𝐂𝐨𝐽 was talking in his sleep inside his dream. The team gathers around a table where 𝐂𝐨𝐽 suddenly shouts that it has no past to return to and that the time it's spending with the survivors is the best it's ever had. Later, they head to an icy dungeon, sparkling with snow crystals, where they soon spot a rare ogre. While everyone communicates silently through telepathy, Kazuna ends up ruining the point of it by attacking the monster directly, hoping to show off its skills. It performs very well with the sword and even reveals a new move called Parallel, which allows it to create a duplicate of itself. After they manage to take down the ogre, Nick approaches him, saying he suddenly feels exhausted. Kazuna admits it was its doing, and that it used their stamina and magic to activate its skills. It adds that it can create up to 5 copies, and all these abilities were copied from a swordsman who used it once. Tiana calls this pure cheating, but Nick says he's just happy that Kazuna is on their side. Huron then suggests using the Unity again, but Nick refuses this, saying that anything that leaves them collapsing right after a battle is too risky to use frequently. Meanwhile, all Koran can think about, as always, is food. When they arrive at a food court, Nick finds himself thinking back to the dream he had last night. While they're sitting at the table, Zen starts giving some completely useless food advice. And when Nick teases her about how she's the one who eats their budget, she throws the first survivor rule back at him and shuts him up. As soon as Nick starts thinking about her again, he spots his old crush Claudine sitting nearby, clearly using her charm on another poor sucker who has already fallen for her. She's crying that she has to return to her mother who doesn't have much time left, using the sympathy card to string the guy along. Well, then Nick appears beside them and starts mocking her with small jabs that slowly expose her drama. The new victim turns to Claudine and asks who Nick is, and Claudine looks ready to explode. Nick then returns the guy's gift, saying it's not even her birthday, exposing everything. The confused guy turns to Nick and asks if everything Claudine said was a lie. Later, while Nick is busy elaborating a plan for a new cave dungeon they must explore, Claudine suddenly appears and dumps a cup of juice right on his head as revenge. But Nick remains completely calm and simply asks if her mother is okay. She even brings that big feline guy named Leon from before who tries to intimidate Nick, warning him to treat Claudine better. Nick responds with a side smile, asking if the guy is also part of the Iron Kittens, which instantly makes Claudine explode, shouting that the name was Iron Tigers, not Kittens. While the discussion heats up, Leon tells Nick to step out so they can resolve this with a fight. As soon as they arrive at a quiet place where no one can see them, Nick assumes an offensive stance, ready to fight, but out of nowhere, the big kitty suddenly apologizes. He thanks Nick for finally putting an end to Claudine's nonsense, and even says Nick can have her now. Leon admits he's used her enough and that she has a bunch of enemies behind her, just like Nick. Then he casually asks if Nick has also been tricking new recruits in his group. Nick looks furious for a second, but suddenly bursts into laughter like a complete maniac. And well, when Leon starts thinking they're on the same wavelength, Nick punches him right in the chin and sends him to the ground. The fight begins, but ends almost immediately, since the big kitty stands no chance against our Professor Nick. Nick immobilizes him and explains that, although he also wants money, tricking friends for it would make the money worthless. Well then, a new guy sneaks from behind and lands a surprise wind attack on Nick, catching him off guard. But before this guy can finish bragging, our Dragonian girl appears with a perfect ambush. Well then, the guild lady, Vilma, arrives, and the big kitty lion suddenly proposes a fist fight based on math to settle things once and for all, naming the receptionist as referee. The next day, the guild lady explains that there are 10 rounds in the math fight, where the problems get harder each time and each round only ends when one side finishes their calculations, with the sides with higher scores winning a free punch. As soon as Karan starts worrying about how big a responsibility this seems, everyone is shocked when she ends up winning the draw, and she starts having a panic attack just thinking about math, while Claudine's provocation makes her want to jump off a cliff. After that, she does a mock test and congratulates her, saying she has decent potential if she studies a bit. He hands her the paper, which makes her very sad, but he cheers her up, saying that after training she'll be an Einstein in no time. As they leave, Kazuna offers to fight for them. But Zen thinks he's too strong, and insists this is a problem they need to solve on their own. So they spend the next few weeks carefully planning their strategy, while Zen gathers some information from his ladies. The night before the competition, Nick tells everyone that without a doubt Claudine's team will try something sneaky, and reveals that they've already done this kind of trick before. Zen adds that his night ladies told him that the Tiger Group is much smarter than they look, and have some method of sharing information that no one can detect. Tiana guesses that they're using thought gems, which are basically the ghetto version of Kazuna's telepathy. Nick tells Karan that she just needs to keep solving her problems until Tiana gives the signal. Meanwhile, it's revealed that Claudine barely avoided being sold as a slave by her own parents. And after that, she started using her low-budget Taylor Swift look to trick simps and take their money, feeling quite satisfied with her life of scams until Nick appeared. Just thinking about him, she wakes from the nightmare and swears she'll make him pay for turning her life upside down. On the day of the competition, the Catwoman delivers the problem sheets to the two girls, and 𝐂𝐨 feels relieved that they're not difficult. But Claudine provokes, saying that even children could solve the first one easily. Meanwhile, Nick fights the Tiger Man Leon and notices he's not fighting back, which makes him think the guy might just be buying time. Seeing Nick fight, 𝐂𝐨 starts to worry before concentrating and finishing first. While she throws a confident smile at Claudine, the Catwoman announces the score, revealing that Claudine left her behind with an almost perfect score, which Zen expected since 𝐂𝐨 had rushed to finish. Nick still jokes that the kitty's soft paws can't hurt his rock-hard abs, but his face quickly falls when Leon lands a dirty hit on his solar plexus. Still, it's not enough to knock him out. And Nick already imagined they would try to abuse the math part, since 𝐂𝐨 is at a clear disadvantage and they aim to win only with penalty hits. With that, Claudine wins another round, making 𝐂𝐨 shrink as 𝑨𝒏𝒖𝒄𝒊𝒆 gets hit because of her mistake. But the Chad tells her that she's not the one taking the hits. She shouts anyway, saying he's getting hurt just because of her bird brain. Hearing this, Nick laughs and says he was ready to take dozens of hits back there, when she could barely do 20 before training. But now that he's seen her progress, he has total hope in her. He calls her the smartest girl he knows, which makes 𝐂𝐨 so happy that she tells Claudine to take her empty talk straight to the trash where it belongs. She concentrates on the next round, totally focused and completely unbothered by Claudine's chatter. Meanwhile, Tiana keeps an eye on Claudine, waiting to catch her the moment the problems start getting harder and 𝐂𝐨 starts falling behind. While Claudine solves the equations easily, cheating like a smug little gremlin. Seeing Nick at his limit, Tiana scans the area with her magic vision, but finds no signs of foul play. After Nick takes another penalty hit, Tiana calls everyone's attention with a strong hit from her pipe and tells the guild lady that she has no time to watch a slow math match, suggesting they solve all the problems at once. The guild lady warns that doing this means whoever finishes first has the victory basically guaranteed with 7 consecutive penalty punches. But Nick just smiles and tells her to bring it on. With that, the Catwoman delivers all the sheets to 𝐂𝐨 and the Dragon Girl, and Tiana keeps her eyes sharp while waiting for Claudine to finally show her cheating hand. Seeing 𝐂𝐨 going all out, Claudine gets arrogant and tells her hidden guy somewhere to bring the calculator. While the two girls fiercely wield their pencils, Tiana notices a magical signature at a distance and leaves with the group. Nick notices and provokes Leon about his missing team member, which makes the Tiger Man worry that they discovered his genius plan. In panic, he shouts for Claudine to stop, but this only makes her angrier and raises the guild lady's suspicion. Meanwhile, Claudine struggles to coordinate with the nerd. Then Kizuna finally appears with the rest of the group greeting him from behind. Meanwhile, Claudine is at her limit and gets so frustrated that she shouts at the nerd that he's taking too long. Right at that moment, Tiana appears with the idiot in robes, displaying the thought gem for everyone. The guild boss asks the blonde if she also has one to Tiana's fury. With that, the guards take the kitty to jail, but Claudine starts crying and whining that she fought her whole life and no one has the right to blame her. 𝐂𝐨 doesn't buy this, and Tiana affirms that everyone deserves a chance to change. Later that night, everyone goes to the tavern to celebrate 𝐂𝐨's mathematical talent. While being thrown behind bars, the Tiger Man dives into memories thinking about a party of adventurers known as the Silver Tigers. Who led the party was 𝐵𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, someone who stood out for his sharp intelligence among the somewhat slow Tigerians of the forest, and that guy was none other than his own brother. Thanks to 𝐵𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's brain, they managed to conquer the infamous Steel Moon Mecha Infernal Labyrinth and steal the treasure hidden deep down. But his reckless nature ended up costing him his life too early, leaving Leon with distrust toward humans. Well, at this moment, a guard enters the lion's cell, draws his sword without warning and points it at him, demanding to know the location of the treasures his party sold, since not even the black market left a trace. When the guard asks if he still has the treasures, Leon gives a malicious smile and returns the question, wanting to know how he found out. It turns out there's an item that Leon refused to sell, simply because it's too dangerous to handle. With no other option, he finally summons it, revealing the Sword of Evolution, a weapon that strangely looks a lot like Kizuna. Meanwhile, our survivors are out there, enjoying the mountain of money they just earned. Being the undisputed queen of gamblers, Tiana sits confidently at the casino table, totally immersed in the game, but with an eye on everything around. At the same time, Nick shows up to accompany Kizuna, who came just to get ice cream. but gets irritated when it's sold out right when it's his turn. Seeing that they're already there, Nick casually asks if 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨 wants to try betting too, but the sword responds that it can't because of the ethics protocols embedded in it. That's when 𝐂𝐨𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨 notices a man with cards and discovers that these cards are impregnated with anti-magic to prevent cheating. Well, at this moment, a malicious lion is seen approaching the casino, looking for his prey. Inside, Tiana calmly savors the sweet smell of imminent victory, totally aware that no one there stands a chance against her. As soon as she wins and prepares to leave, the malicious lion from before invades the casino, causing a huge mess and throwing everything into chaos. The guy starts looking around, and it quickly becomes obvious that he's there for our hero Nick, and he holds a serious grudge. While his thoughts focus on Nick, it's revealed that this monster is actually Leon, and his beastly transformation has something to do with the sword he summoned before. He remembers how much he envied our friend. While the story returns to the cell, the sword cuts Leon's bindings and asks if he's finally ready to unleash his destructive powers, wanting to know who he plans to annihilate first. The sight of the blade and the deadly pressure emanating from it are so intense that the nearby guard ends up peeing his pants. Leon calmly tells the sword of destruction who his target is, and when he questions if the weapon is still strong enough, it responds proudly that it's from 100 years ago and that technology has only gotten worse since then. Without hesitation, Leon grabs the sword, shouts evolution, and transforms into this terrifying beast. While Leon continues destroying everything, Tiana turns to Agate and asks who let the big kitty into the casino. She starts getting nervous, realizing that she delivered the weapon when entering. And right at this moment, the big kitty stops in front of her, demanding to know where Nick is. Tiana casually asks who he is, but freezes the moment she realizes it's actually Leon. Surprised by how huge he got, she still refuses to give up Nick's location. Leon doesn't take her seriously and threatens to finish her right there, warning that his sense of smell has evolved so much that now he can sniff out lies. The lady calmly makes the big kitty talk purposely, making him lower his guard before suddenly hitting him with her lightning and frying him. She tries to flee, but the big kitty recovers instantly and throws an entire casino table in front of her, blocking her path. Tiana's eyes widen, while she struggles to understand how the beast healed so fast. Thinking quickly, she turns to Agate's manager and tells him to protect her, pointing out that she's basically his passport to a fortune. While the guy runs to escort her, Tiana turns and tells the furious beast how important it is to trust friends and truly care about others. Leon sniffs the air using his ultra-evolved senses to catch even the smallest lies, but finds nothing wrong in her words. The idea doesn't sit well with him, who snorts, calling it pathetic, while wondering if that's how hope really smells. As soon as Tiana points out that keeping her hostage won't attract Nick, the big kitty jumps at her with a crushing attack, only to be separated by Nick himself, who refuses to let Tiana die under his watch. That's when the Sword of Evolution speaks again, warning that another of its species is nearby, before realizing it's actually its long-lost rival, the Sword of Bonds. Excited by the chance to settle old accounts, the shadowy sword unleashes all its potential in Leon, transforming him into an even bigger and more monstrous version. The Sword of Bonds immediately sees how dangerous this is, recognizing that the shadowy weapon is now devouring not only Leon's body, but also his mind. As soon as the confrontation begins, Tiana calls our boy to use the Unity, and he quickly takes the chance, managing to fuse with her on the spot. From this fusion emerges a majestic figure, almost feminine, with long hair. Their Unity form launches a freezing strike called Ice Age, followed by another attack, but Leon passes through it like it was nothing. Well, at this moment, a crack forms in his fury, and Leon starts questioning why he's doing all this, realizing there's no real objective. He just wanted to play around with Nick a bit, but the sword Burke pushed him too far, and now innocent people are getting hurt. The sword feels Leon starting to calm down and desperately tries to push him back into madness, telling him to enjoy seeing others suffer. But Leon doesn't fall for it this time. Even so, the Sword of Evolution says coldly that it's too late to turn back. Leon fights against the sword's control, trying to break free while it uses his worst memories against him. He shouts for help, and suddenly a holy light appears, followed by the majestic Unity form of Nick and Tiana, who throws anti-magic cards to break the sword's dominion. With their help, Leon is saved and finds himself back in his cell, reflecting on his actions. Nick shows up for a visit, and Leon greets him with a mischievous smile, joking if he's there just to see a tiger at the zoo. Nick assures him that fortunately no one at the casino died, though the place itself is now in complete ruins, which visibly puts Leon at ease before the guy leaves after a short but much-needed conversation. The next day, Nick is running when he hears 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 voice motivating him in his head. He thinks his simp levels are getting out of control, but when she mentions that he has to buy merchandise to reach the next level, he gets disappointed with her greed. The two take a break at the park, and 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 asks if he found a purpose in life now, confessing that she would feel guilty if he turned into an oxygen waste, like some of her fans. This leaves Nick speechless, and he thanks her for saving him from becoming a small-time criminal, saying she really became his idol that day. 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 dives into thoughts and suddenly gets sentimental. What Nick imagines to be the real reason she got into this. Back at boyfriend Donnie's pub, we see 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, whose real name is 𝑨𝒏𝒖𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. Before she became an idol, she used to sing just for fun. Until one day, a producer appeared and recruited her for his company. The boyfriend tries to scare the bald producer away, but when he hears how much money this could make, he raises his hands and becomes her manager. That night, she sees someone shine like a diamond on stage, and this ignites a fire in her heart to sing and have fans who accept her. Before she knows it, she's in an idol trio named Jules. And while she enjoys every moment, her life with Don starts to crumble, since he turns into a leeching gambling addict who only sees her as a walking money bag and refuses to admit he has a problem with games. Some days later, 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 sits alone thinking how low Don fell from the dream they once shared. He used to talk about opening a bar that would make Gordon Ramsay proud. This is the day she sees Claudine destroy Nick's non-existent dignity, leaving him so devastated that he walks in the rain and sits there like a lifeless husk. So she decides to talk to him out of pity. Some days later, 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 finds herself at a casino where Don burns her earnings. There, she sees an angel who is more of a gambling demon than anything else, effortlessly embarrassing everyone at the table. Shortly after, the angel transforms into a magical being and kills a monster right in front of her eyes, leaving 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 completely amazed. Later, her producer makes Don sign a contract to pay off all his debts, on the condition that he has to forget 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 and never contact her again. 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 feels deep sadness and says she likes him very much, but is doing this because he stopped looking at her. She adds that he harms her now, and she's tired of trying to fix him. Don bursts into laughter, then says he'll make a fortune and show her. With a self-satisfied smile, he walks out of her life forever. After that, Nick appears at 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's comeback show, where she starts with a cheerful smile, as always, and tells the fans about meeting an angel during the recent casino incident. Hearing her mention the knight who cultivates aura, who saved her life and left without even saying his name, Nick feels a strange familiarity. She shocks him even more by revealing that her comeback song is about her new hero, the legendary paladin, to share the hope she gained when she was in the dumps with her fans. After the show, 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 does the telepathy trick with Nick at the park again and continues mocking him for being hopelessly deluded until he tells her to stop playing and just tell him what's really stressing her out. The two end up having a sincere conversation, surprisingly healthy. The next day, 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 brings Zen a magazine article about a strange ghost known as the Step Man, a guy who apparently spends nights kidnapping children. Karan gets super excited explaining how this guy manages to jump in the air and how no one has caught him yet. Karan argues that they probably should stop him if he's really evil, but Nick intervenes saying the whole thing seems fake, though 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 immediately starts arguing like a stubborn child, insisting the guy is totally real. That's when a green-haired girl named Olivia Taylor suddenly appears, excited to hear the name Step Man, and proudly reveals that she was the one who wrote the magazine article. Olivia explains that whenever something suspicious happens in the Labyrinth City, she always makes sure to investigate thoroughly and find out who's behind it. Later that night, Zen, drunk, stumbles toward a narrow alley, following a little girl. And well before his eyes, the child is suddenly kidnapped and disappears from sight. While walking with Nick, 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 suddenly stops and tells him that Zen is in danger, making the two run in search of their friend and finding Zen just in time while he stops the Step Man, almost invisible from kidnapping the girl. It turns out the Step Man is very real and 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 immediately engages him in a fight, though the culprit ends up escaping the scene. As soon as they get out of trouble, Zen takes the little girl to a woman named Red, who starts taking care of her. Nick starts questioning the girl about who the man was and what she was doing out there. The girl responds that it was really the Step Man and explains that her mother was tracking him before ending up in the hospital. The group then discovers that her name is Rieni, and Zen adds that they believe what she says. Suddenly, Rien asks Zen to accept her as his student, clearly impressed by his bravery. But Zen responds that she's at least 15 years too young to be his pupil. She then anxiously asks what she should do to train until then, and Zen simply tells her to rest and never try something dangerous again, like chasing the Step Man. Rihanna quickly agrees and happily calls 𝒏𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 her master. The next day, our survivors head to the Bounty Guild, hoping to dig up some information about the stepman. But the Catwoman at the counter refuses to give details of valuable bounties so easily and quickly recognizes Nick as a former member of the War Masters. She delivers them a simple bounty, assigning them a guy named Hardy and promising a reward of several 100,000 dinars if they can catch him. While the receptionist calls their group's name, the other bounty hunters in the room start paying attention and immediately recognize them, with one of them mocking them for being ignorant about how bounty hunting really works. Not one to let it slide, our Queen of Bets, Tiana, throws a bet with the guy, offering him a round. After taking the mission, the survivors head to the slum known as Garbage Collection. Hoping to track the target there, the group approaches the gatekeeper and tries to squeeze some information from him. Instead of being useful, the guy babbles about some Greg whose dog recently gave birth to 10 male puppies. And well, when the survivors are about to give up and leave, realizing they wouldn't get anything useful from him, he suddenly warns them to never cross paths with someone called 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. On the way through the area, a group of bandits tries to rob them, but the group takes them down easily. And Nick makes the leader confess that the man they're hunting can probably be found in the rooms. The group advances through the slum and seeing firsthand how miserable the conditions are for the people living there. Karan quickly recognizes the area and in no time they find the target. Hale tries to run, but they quickly tie him up with ropes. Well, at this moment, a bald man appears revealing he's 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, who claims Hale as his patient. He demands to know why they're taking his patient and gets angry. Nick calmly explains the situation, and after a brief exchange of words, 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 reluctantly lets them go, arguing that a sinner like him cannot be forgiven for his sins. It's revealed that 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, just like 𝒏𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, is also an ex-priest and is qualified enough to treat highly contagious diseases. But for some unknown reasons, he is now trapped in the slum. Kazuna tries to ask 𝐂𝐂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 about the stepman, but they don't get any useful information from him. The survivors return to the guild to claim the bounty, and Tiana takes the opportunity to brag about having won the bet easily. She grabs her winnings and goes straight to the counter, offering free drinks to everyone in the guild, winning their hearts. The next day, the survivors approach the receptionist, hoping to get some information about the stepman. She says she doesn't know much, but mentions a suspicious person who was seen talking with children, pointing to Olivia, who is sitting with Ryan. And the survivors get suspicious of Olivia and decide to investigate further, wondering if she could be the culprit. Nick orders his team to block all exits. And well, when he's about to question Olivia, asking where she was 2 nights ago and if she was kidnapping children, the girl jumps high in the air, creating a hole in the roof and fleeing. Later at the brothel, they talk about things until a surprise guest appears. 💏💄💊 immediately identifies the mature blonde as Ada, and Nick confesses he's a fan of the famous swordsmen of the legendary Great Boss Group. After quick introductions, the woman apologizes for her daughter Rihanna's wild behavior, which 💏💄💊 fully agrees with. This puts the child in rage mode, thinking her master is a total coward. But he says he can't be her master, since little girls terrify him ever since one lied and got him imprisoned for half his life. He adds that now his body literally freezes near young girls like her, and he forgets how to breathe. She asks how he protected her from the kidnappers, and 💏💄💊 responds that any adult would save a child in danger, but maybe this means he's really healing. Rina then forgets the 15-year story, and Ada refuses to marry her daughter to a suspicious priest. But Rina vehemently refuses marriage anyway, saying she has high standards for a boyfriend and only wants 💏💄💊 as her master. With that, things get serious, and Ada advises the group to give up on the useless mission, now that they've seen firsthand that the stepman is way above their level. Nick asserts himself and says she has no right to stop them. Then she responds that he's a stupid boy with no muscle to speak of. Nick accepts this and says he still can't stand still while children are being kidnapped left and right. Ada makes it clear that she's dropping out to save her own skin and ensure Rihanna doesn't become an orphan. Then Nick asks if she'll train his group instead. The group leader, Bull, convinces her without hesitation, and she begins their training, serving a soup that reveals their magical potential, since using magic right is the only chance they have of standing any chance against the stepman. She then trains Nick in the same enhancement magic that the stepman uses, called Light Body, and tells him to jump on a tightrope 10 times. He shocks everyone by passing through this easily until the 9th jump makes him fall to his knees on the concrete. Later that night, the stepman puts his scary hands on another young damsel, but Kazuna and Kuran intervene to save 💏💄💊, who gets disconcerted that he always attacks at exactly the same time. And when Nick asks if he's Olivia, the guy's face falters for a fraction of a second before he dashes to a rooftop. 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨 points out that no ordinary human could use so many spells, and he's probably using a magical item. Then Nick stops by an old friend's house and bribes the artifact expert with food for information. Leon tells him about an artifact called the King of Illusions Jewel, which hides the user's presence and explains that its spell can only be broken by naming the user. Something Nick already tried, but Leon says it only works if he's absolutely certain of who it is. The next day, Nick is practically doing somersaults during training, which reminds him of when he started as a child. His old instructor made him develop physical skills before even touching magic and said that his dwarf structure didn't need to be his weakness. Back to the present, Nick does some complete Spider-Man moves and lands with maximum aura, although he still can't fully control the light body spell. Zen then brings good news, saying he has a solid lead on the hopping man. With that, they go to the slum, where there's nothing new except the body of a newly arrived child. As they approach to check the body, 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨 warns everyone through telepathy that they're being followed and a hooded figure in a boss gank. Suddenly, he uses light body to dodge her monstrous punches, but this spell only confirms Olivia's suspicion that he is the step man. She starts destroying the rails like they're made of tissue paper and responds to 𝐂𝐨𝐴's characteristic technique with her own shadow clones. Mickey takes the chance and shouts for Olivia to admit it already. Then the woman casually lowers her hood and assumes. Olivia says she's sincerely disappointed that he is the step man and explains that although she proudly cosplays as him, she's not the real kidnapper, and they merely share the peculiar hobby of jumping rooftops. Leaving that aside, they open the coffin at the morgue together and don't notice anything strange in the body at first, but Olivia tells them to look closer, and indeed, the girl looks too perfect, which means their senses are being deceived by magic. 𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 suggests they examine the body more carefully, and that's when they find a fragment of the King of Illusions jewel. As soon as Olivia crushes it, the girl's true features appear. Back at the brothel, they identify her as the daughter of a runaway blacksmith. Zen observes that, since the body was discarded with garbage, there's a good chance the culprit is still lurking around that area. While promising they'll return the girl to her parents and bring justice, Zen discreetly admits that he has a pretty solid idea of who the stepman really is. The next night, Nick catches the stepman on a rooftop again. He mocks the faceless figure for missing his sneak attack, and the guy surprises him by complimenting his refined martial art. Nick adopts a serious tone and demands to know why he keeps using the same tactics, knowing they were exposed, but the stepman responds by throwing his chains. Nick advances into hand-to-hand combat and says he discovered the reason behind the kidnappings, especially near the garbage collection areas. The stepman doesn't buy this, but Nick stops his kick inches from the guy's face and retreats. He points out how suspicious it is for a super-qualified doctor to be doing research in the slum and calls out 𝐂𝐿𝐺𝐴VA's name without hesitation. While the clouds part and the moonlight hits his face, the old 𝐂𝐿𝐺𝐴VA's disguise disappears as he congratulates Nick for discovering the truth. Nick says everything became obvious when they discovered that the children had yellow demon disease, and there was no way it would spread from the slum to the city children without some filthy scumbag manipulating everything. Then he smiles, saying his doctor warned him. He adds that Zen also uncovered the plan to kidnap children to use them as guinea pigs in an insane hunt for a cure. Since 𝐂𝐿𝐺𝐴VA clearly isn't in the mood for chat, Nick advances and unleashes a brutal combo that the old man reads like a book, until Nick lands a kick so strong it breaks the roof, making both fall into the warehouse below. He arrogantly thanks the doctor for always following the same path, and the rest of the team arrives ready to fall on the wrinkled old man. Zen takes the moment to ask why he sank to such a low point, and 𝐂𝐺𝐴VA says it's all for his daughter. Zen already knows that yellow demon disease is an STD, and says the girl contracted it by accident from a patient sample while trying to follow in her father's footsteps. Although no one hesitated to spread malicious rumors, the old doctor explodes into a lacerating rant about why his daughter had to die and breaks down, stating that now he's willing to sacrifice as many children as necessary to find the cure she needed. Zen feels disappointed with the mentor he once admired and asks how he can live with himself. The doctor says he's being naive and should understand that everyone carries a dark side. And as a father, his duty surpasses what others think of his distorted methods. Zen says he's heard enough and brings him back to harsh reality. He asks if the doctor even remembers the little girl whose life he stole, then gets furious that the bald old man has already forgotten one of his many victims. He talks about the look on her parents' faces when he returned their daughter's lifeless body and how the whole neighborhood mourned. Zen reminds him that all those children aren't just nameless orphans, but are loved by someone, just like his daughter was. 𝐂𝐿𝐺𝐴VA apologizes and admits that he met a priest by chance and clung to him like a desperate parasite until he was accepted as a priest. Still, 𝒏𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 reminds him that he has saved lives through his clinic and says that to the people. He has always been a true doctor. Hearing the man still vomit toxic positivity makes the bald guy laugh until he coughs up blood and says stopping him won't solve everything. But �𝒏stands firm and says he'll face whatever comes, one step at a time. At this exact moment, Kazuna senses something dangerous approaching fast. And the second he warns the group, an energy beam pierces the old doctor's chest. A white-masked knight appears and tells the doctor that it's time for his eternal sleep. He says he came to rescue him, but the orders changed. Then he brags about having crushed the precious King of Illusion's stone, which is worth billions. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 simply responds that his fate was sealed the moment he chose to get caught. When �𝒏 tries to reach him, the masked knight throws him aside with telepathy and tells him not to waste pity on enemies, mocking him to save himself. Karan and Tiana run to help, but the white mask moves faster than their eyes can follow and sends them flying like they were kicked straight to Narnia. While �𝒏 heals the doctor, he tells him that he always makes the same mistake of forgetting to prioritize his comrades. Then calls his supposed kindness nothing more than a selfish need to save the helpless and makes it clear that this mentality will destroy both him and his friends. Shortly after, Nick says they need to use the Unity, but freezes upon seeing everyone barely holding on. Olivia quickly snaps him out of his trance, offering to buy time for him to choose. And as soon as �𝒏 gives the green light, the girl channels Jackie Chan and kicks White Mask to another dimension. She reveals who he is and proudly introduces herself as many things. But today she and Mommy are here to put him in his place. White Mask says curiosity killed the cat and advances with his sword, which she catches casually like it's a hot potato before hammering him with consecutive kicks that crack his mask and force him to retreat. While White Mask starts healing, Olivia realizes she can't break the ancient equipment, but Nick and �𝒏 combine powers, and for the first time, White Mask truly panics. Realizing he found a worthy opponent, he intensifies and uses gravity magic to pin Olivia to the ground. After that, he simply crushes our protagonist with a sword that really weighs more than a mountain. Then, Nick switches to a speed-based approach that White Mask first confuses with a basic step spell, though he quickly realizes that Nick is actually jumping in the air. Meanwhile, right when Olivia thinks it's time to kick the bucket, she notices the pressure has decreased and frees herself from the gravity spell. While White Mask gets distracted with Nick's ultra-fast aerial movement, Olivia advances like Sonic and kicks a huge rock in his direction, which he barely dodges. White Mask then focuses on Nick and catches him convinced that he won. But Kazuna suddenly comes flying like a shuriken and hits him right in the face. Still, he rips it off like it was nothing and says he's calling it a day before making a dramatic nuclear exit. Everyone escapes the rubble intact, but �𝒏 immediately runs to Bald Doctor's side. The old man reveals that he himself has the yellow disease and won't last long. Then, while the building shakes, Kazuna warns everyone that there's no time. With that, they run out of the collapsing building. The next day, �𝒏 mourns the loss of a great man from this world. Nick offers some comfort, and Karan says he did everything he could. After wiping some manly tears, they regroup while Kazuna says the big case is finally closed. Though Olivia reminds that White Mask was just part of a larger organization, there's always a boss manipulating everything from the shadows, and with their stock of ancient weapons, they could cause all kinds of chaos. Hearing this, Nick turns to the green-haired monster woman and asks who she really is in all this. She jokingly calls him cheeky for even asking before casually revealing that, like the Sword of Bonds, she carries the title of Sword of War. Since that day, the survivors spend most of their time in bed, realizing how weak they really are after facing White Mask. While looking at an old broken sword, Nick remembers being in a carriage with his parents on their way to where his uncle Argos lives. When he hears his father go silent, and his mother pushes him like a toy into a secret compartment saying they love him very much. He hears swords clashing and someone shouting that Argos betrayed them. He barely escapes from the fat man who grabs the money and even checks the compartment. But Nick's luck gets worse when he finds a huge man with a knife, right when the fat man catches up to him. As soon as he closes his eyes, the big guy takes out the walking Big Mac and murmurs an apology. Nick later discovers that the man is actually his uncle Argos and becomes his student, moved by regret for being useless and failing to protect his parents. Wondering what he could have done to change the course of things, Nick lies in bed while his thoughts get darker until he falls asleep. He wakes up to the sound of heavy rain falling and 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 singing nearby. With the umbrella he lets slip and fall on her head, they end up sharing a quiet and sweet moment, talking through the night. Meanwhile, �𝒏 takes over Dr. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's clinic and finds true joy in helping the people of the slum who need it most. He realizes that it's impossible for him to hate the doctor and finally accepts his selfish wish upon seeing the smile on a patient's face. Back at Tiana's house, she spends the night without sleep, reflecting on her life. Even though she keeps winning bets and is practically swimming in wealth, everything seems empty until she tastes a delicious soup that reminds her of a dear friend who would have loved it. The next day, 𝐂𝐨 checks how everyone is and asks if they're okay. When Kazuna notices what Zen has been doing in his free time, he mentions the rule they made about not interfering in each other's lives. A rule that now makes things seem colder, since after work ended, it pushed them apart. That night, Kazuna visits Zen at the clinic, and when Zen tells him to leave, the boy says he doesn't need to interfere in his life just to watch his back in a rough area. 𝐂𝐨 also appears the next morning, and Kazuna tries to break the ice. But when she discovers they had breakfast without her, she immediately explodes. While walking through the streets, irritated that she still can't get 𝐂𝐨 out of her head, she sees a little girl falling for the same scam she once fell for and gives the scamming merchant a scolding of a lifetime. Shortly after, Nick and the others bump into her and invite her to the festival. She accepts the second Tiana says there's good food. Being with friends helps push away the frustration from her last party, and she promises to fulfill her duty as a proud Dragonian who is with humanity to help save the world. At this instant, Olivia bursts in with bombshell news about the Demon Lord's return and White Mask's involvement, but quickly admits it's all in her head and that her only real skill is creating fake news. Seeing everyone together moves her, and she finally admits that she's been thinking about her lost Dragon King stone alone, even while having fun with everyone. Tiana says she can go after it, but this time with the whole group, and that their rule doesn't count if she turns her personal search into a team job. Nick intervenes and says that the survivors fear no work. This cheers up 𝐂𝐨. And while everyone raises their hands like they're posing for an awkward group photo, fireworks light up the sky. They watch the spectacular show together as a team with renewed confidence. And hey, if this tale of broken trust, second chances, and a sword with more emotional baggage than your ex left you wanting more unhinged anime breakdowns, smash that subscribe button on Curious Nerd. We serve premium character development with a side of questionable life choices weekly. Don't be a background NPC in someone else's party. Become a main character in ours. Hit subscribe, ring that notification bell, and join our guild of degenerates. Your future self will thank you probably.